Hello everyone, Jason from Truth Behind the Magic here. This video is going to be a bit of a departure from what I normally do on this channel, but hopefully it'll be something interesting, something kind of to keep it fresh. It'll probably only interest a couple obvious groups of people, but still, I think it's worth mentioning this because it's always been something that's been fascinating to me as a fan of both Disney and the Beach Boys, who are easily my favorite group of all time. I'm sure you can see the drums behind me and the monitors back there, and music is important to me, and the Beach Boys have always been a part of that. The reason I'm making this video primarily is because Brian Wilson passed away yesterday. The world lost one of the last truly great songwriters, at least from that era. And that's what really sparked this video. I put this all together in a couple hours, just coming up with kind of a plot and some information for this. But just kind of preface everything, Disney and the Beach Boys really go hand in hand. They're both California icons. They're important ambassadors for the state. Even though Disney is, of course, not from California, but as a corporation, as an entity, they're really associated with California, although in recent years, I would probably make the argument that Florida has really become the home of Disney, not just because of Disney World, but you have Disney Cruise Line down there as well. Disney Vacation Club is, of course, a big part of a lot of the resorts down there, so it's really just become kind of a focal point of a lot of their operations, but definitely a California company. And really, I've always kind of found it fascinating that the Beach Boys do have so many different tie-ins with Disney, and that's really what made me want to do this, because I've always kind of noticed things over the years, and just things that I've seen on YouTube, and I kind of realized, like, the Beach Boys have a lot of connections with Disney, maybe more than any other, I would say, definitely more than any other mainstream band. Someone might correct me on that, but at least in terms of what's in the parks and in the media for them, it seems like they have more than just about anyone I've seen. Maybe Phil Collins, because he obviously wrote a couple soundtracks for them, but anyway, kind of a long intro there. But just to get started, going back to the roots of the Beach Boys, the roots of Disney, the Wilson childhood home was in Hawthorne, California, which is only about 30 miles from Disneyland, so it can be assumed that they grew up going to Disney. Probably all of them, I would say at least some of them. I believe Mike Love has even talked about that before, but Disney was definitely a factor in their lives in both media and the physical presence of Disneyland, since, of course, at that time, that was the only physical presence of Disney. But when you really dive into it, the Beach Boys literally might not exist today without the Walt Disney Company, because Brian has stated on multiple occasions that Surfer Girl, which was the first song he ever wrote, was heavily influenced by When You Wish Upon a Star, and you can tell from listening to it, because it's When You Wish Upon a Star. And then, of course, Surfer Girl is Do You Love Me? Do You, Surfer Girl? I know everyone watching this knows that, but of course the verse is probably what matches up with it the most. I have seen you on the shore. I mean, it really is, it's pretty much the same melody structure there, so I can definitely see how that was an influence on that. And, you know, without that song, even though it wasn't their first single, wasn't their first hit, technically, if he doesn't write that, then they may not exist today. Jumping ahead to 1965, the movie Monkey's Uncle came out. Probably not one that a lot of people have seen. I've not even seen it, as someone who is in some ways a Disney fan. I'm more of a Disney Parks fan, though, I will say. So that's probably part of the reason I haven't seen that. But the title track in that was performed by the Beach Boys. written by the Sherman Brothers, of course, the legendary Disney songwriters doing movie music, theme park music, all kinds of stuff. And to me, that song is just so cool because it's the only collaboration that I know of between the Sherman Brothers and the Beach Boys / Brian Wilson. So it's really interesting to see those epic songwriters come together. Probably my two favorite songwriters in terms of Brian Wilson and the Sherman Brothers. I guess it's three songwriters technically, but definitely an interesting combination there. And Brian didn't do any of the writing on that, but of course the Beach Boys are performing it. And that song is on the Timeless Classics CD in the Disney Classics box set. And I would definitely suggest, if you were an audiophile or just someone who likes to collect Disney stuff, get this box set that this comes in, because you get a very good selection of stuff all the way from the 30s up till, I believe that came out in 2012 or 2016. You get a lot of the good Renaissance music, and definitely my favorite on that is the Theme Park Classics CD. But yeah, Monkey's Uncle is one of the ones on there, interestingly, and it is a very good song. So then you go from there, 1971, another kind of indirect connection. The Beach Boys released the song Disney Girls from the album Surf's Up. And you have the beautiful voice of Bruce Johnston, where he's really looking back on childhood and young adulthood, and just the nostalgia and warm feelings of Disney movies, and, you know, wanting to go back and really painting a perfect image of how a lot of people feel about classic Disney. So that's just another tie-in there. Now moving forward to 1975, the album cover for the Beach Boys compilation Spirit of America prominently features the profile of Mickey Mouse on the front. It almost seems like a under-the-table type deal, like they weren't allowed to use it. That's probably not true, but it's just the way it's in there seems like kind of bootleggy to me. But that album was, of course, the sequel to the hit compilation album Endless Summer, which was one of the greatest compilations of all time. At that point, may have even been the biggest selling compilation. I'm honestly not sure. But yeah, there's a cool Mickey Mouse right in the middle of that, so that just shows once again they knew the importance of Disney, having it featured so prominently as part of the spirit of America, quite literally. Going from there, you have the Country Bear Vacation Hoedown. And I will just say, kind of as an aside, I should have said this at the beginning, but I'm doing this chronologically, but a couple things will not be chronological because there is kind of a way I want to structure this at the end, and you will see that. But Country Bear Vacation Hoedown opens in Disneyland, featuring a song called California Bears, obviously a cover of California Girls. And that show has been kind of panned by a lot of fans, at least at the time. Well, obviously at the time, because it's not around anymore. It's not remembered as fondly as the regular Country Bear show, but honestly, it has a really good soundtrack. Go back and listen to it, watch the show, and that's just one of the many great songs in that show. And jumping forward from there, a big one, which honestly might be the most obvious direct tie between the Beach Boys and Disney World property, the parks/resorts, is in 1988. The music video for Kokomo is filmed at the yet-to-be-opened Grand Floridian Resort. You can actually still walk around there today, where they were in the video. They had all the cheerleaders there around the band. I believe they were from the University of Oklahoma or Nevada, something like that, but you can still walk around there at Grand Floridian. It's around the pool/main beach area there, and you can see a lot of the shots from the video going from there. And because of this, the Beach Boys, I guess, are essentially considered the first guests to have ever stayed at Grand Floridian, and that's really cool, because I still think it's the flagship Disney resort. People have tried to argue that the Riviera took that over, but that's absolute bunk. I would save that for another video, but any real Disney fan is going to say, no, that is not the flagship of Disney. That's a whole controversial statement, I'm sure, but most of you agree with me. But I always found that so cool walking around the resort. You were like, oh, they filmed that right here. When I was working Bell Services, I would have to deliver luggage to the resorts a lot, and I always saved the Magic Kingdom area for last because I just loved being around there. Always saved Grand Floridian for last, and it's just because walking in there is really its own feeling. It's so cool. The Beach Boys have been directly or indirectly featured in a lot of different Disney media ventures. They were featured in multiple episodes of Full House. Of course, there's the John Stamos connection there. And that show was, of course, owned by Disney, produced by Disney. And that show has a lot of ties to the Disney parks. Multiple episodes were filmed on property. So another kind of indirect tie there. The Beach Boys were also featured in multiple Disney sing-alongs and albums throughout the years. A lot of their music, whether it was being covered by kids singing it or Mickey or things of that nature, it's been on multiple Disney compilation albums. A big one here, Food Rocks, replaces Kitchen Cabaret at Epcot in 1994, and probably has the funniest Beach Boys tie-in, but once again one of the most obvious, because it features an aptly named cover version of Good Vibrations called Good Nutrition by the Peach Boys, and it of course goes, we're talking of good nutrition. It's a great funny play on words there, probably my favorite song from that show, which of course was later replaced by Soarin'. Well, I guess you could say replaced, just in quite literal the area sense, replaced by Soarin'. So you can't hear that anymore. Now here we get to Disney California Adventure, and it really picks up here because the Beach Boys were featured a lot in that park and still are. And the first of these was the Paradise Pier area, which was later replaced by Pixar Pier. And that area had a soundtrack that played numerous Calliope versions of popular songs, most of them about California. And these, of course, included quite a few hits from the Beach Boys. And despite never having been to California Adventure or Disneyland, I really enjoy listening to that music loop, because the versions of those songs are just so different from any other you will hear. It's really interesting hearing the Beach Boys stuff in a Calliope format. It actually sounds pretty good. And sticking with Disney California Adventure, like I said, they have a lot of stuff there. The Beach Boys had a physical tie-in, so to speak, with the park there, because they performed there at least once in the early 2000s. They may have even performed in the 90s. Because they had a stage there, and similar to Epcot, which has the different festival concert series, they had a concert series there that the Beach Boys were a part of. There is some footage of that on YouTube. I've seen it in the past, which was the reason I even knew about that. But just another interesting thing there that the Beach Boys would, of course, be willing to play at a Disney park. And now getting to what is almost certainly my favorite Disney tie-in to the Beach Boys, specifically Brian Wilson in this case, is the 2011 album In the Key of Disney. And beyond being just my favorite Beach Boys Disney tie-in, I think that is probably my favorite album of all time, which may sound kind of crazy, but just hearing Brian in a great cast of musicians and singers around him singing Disney songs with his own arrangements. A lot of them are kind of, I wouldn't say based on other Beach Boys songs, but you can hear the similarities. And I think it's just so special to hear that. I'm so glad they did that album. Definitely give it a listen if you are a Beach Boys fan, even if you don't care about Disney. And especially if you are a Disney fan, you should give it a listen. There's some really great covers on there. Kiss the Girl from Little Mermaid is really good. Can You Feel the Love Tonight? Of course, from The Lion King. You've Got a Friend in Me. Baby Mine from Dumbo. those are all just incredible, and really every song on there is enjoyable, which is frankly hard to do for an album, especially these days. But it is a great listen. It's not a ridiculously long album, but this one is I believe it was an Amazon exclusive, so you do get the bonus, A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes. So if you can find this on eBay, I think that was like $4 or $5. Definitely search for the one that has the extra song on it. You can find those on YouTube as well, but just if you're a collector or audiophile, that would be good. And this is a great segue into kind of what I wanted to save till the end here, and this is why I said it would be kind of not chronological completely, but I want to talk about places on Disney property where you can still hear and enjoy songs from the Beach Boys / Brian Wilson. And just to segue directly from In the Key of Disney, if you've stayed at Art and Animation or even just walked around, you know that there are songs from that album that play in that music loop. It's not an incredibly long music loop. It might be 30 minutes. I would be surprised, honestly. It might just be 20. It probably is 30, but anyway, that's a digression. But so you will hear them a lot because it loops a lot. Kiss the Girl and I Just Can't Wait to Be King are the two that are a part of that soundtrack. I know a lot of people really like that soundtrack. Some people really hate it, that music loop. I saw a comment that said the entire music loop sounds like bad cover version, bad karaoke of Disney songs, but I would say that might be true for some of them, but the Brian Wilson and some of the others are very good. And I know, to once again mention when I was working Bell Services, when I would have to take luggage over there, it felt like every time I would hear one of those Brian Wilson songs, and I would be like, oh, that's part of the soundtrack here, so he still lives on there. Who knows how long that'll be until they change that music loop, but at least for the moment, you can hear it over there. Blizzard Beach is another big one. Of course, the Beach Boys fit the theme of that perfectly, because the theming of that water park is just very in line with surf rock and that kind of music. And it features multiple Beach Boys songs. Kokomo, I believe, is pretty much the most prominent, most well-liked one of theirs that's in that set list. And that's not surf rock, really, but you get the point. And to kind of get to the end here, I've previously heard and seen people saying that you can still hear Beach Boys songs at California Adventure. I've seen either people saying, like, the Esplanade outside the entrance, or maybe even inside the entrance, like at the entrance area of the park inside. I believe that's true, that they still have one or two songs that play there. If someone knows, please answer that, because I really couldn't get a concrete answer trying to research that. I listened to the music loop and didn't hear it, but also the music loop that I heard was entirely Disney songs, so I don't think it was the entire loop, at least for California Adventure. It may have just been the Disneyland part of it. But yeah, if someone knows, please let me know. That'd be a big help, because I would like to know if either of those guesses are right as far as the Esplanade or inside the park, or if there's other places in there where they're still playing their music. And to just kind of wrap it up, like I said, this is a great marriage between two iconic, quintessential California entities. And even as someone not from California, I can appreciate what they did by coming together. There's just so much good stuff that has come out of, I guess, not necessarily collaboration. Well, in the case of Monkey's Uncle, it was a literal collaboration, but just from really Disney paying respect to the Beach Boys by featuring them in so many things, and vice versa, the Beach Boys really paying homage to Disney, appreciating what the company is. Like I said, they might not even exist today without Disney, so hopefully you like this. If you have any suggestions, I might kind of get a series going here of how bands and people and just different things tie into Disney. Maybe start doing the history of some things with kind of my perspective on it as a cast member, but a former cast member, I should say. But anyway, if you stayed here this long, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.